Hello, tea people. Food break day. I've had this tea a couple times now. Let me get this out here. I'm gonna do this without getting everything wet. Okay, whatever. So what you're seeing there is the golden flower fungus. It's a probiotic fungus, basically. Aerotium cristatum. Quick PubMed article shows that it potentially helps reduce ulcerative colitis by modulating gut bacteria microbiota in mice. Considered kind of a probiotic in general, and it can though cause some issues with folks who are gluten intolerant. So worth noting. This is a white2tea production. It's double smoked, and let's get into it. Zoom back out here a little bit. This. So I've had this like 3 times. I'm trying to figure these out still. Nice big leaves. Way too much coming off here. That's way too much. I'd say lightly pressed. Maybe like a 3 out of 10 in terms of the press. Nice big leaves, like I said. And this is a smoked tea, double smoked tea. Although it'll be interesting to have it here. Episode. I don't find it to be quite super smoky. Boiling water here. I'm gonna rinse this. I think if you were really after the sort of like health benefits of this tea, which, you know, frankly, there's real science there, so I'm not gonna. We certainly have made fun of that in the past. Check out some of our episodes released on 4/1. But I'm gonna give this a rinse. Getting the water boiling back up again. And get in here for some smells. Interesting, nice plumminess to this. Smells like a fermented tea. The smoke on it is really subtle in my opinion. I'd say I'd probably have a hard time noticing it if I didn't know what I was drinking ahead of time. And yeah, looking forward to diving in on this one. I think price-wise for a white2tea specifically, this is definitely what we considered kind of a daily drinker price point, about 10 cents per gram, something like that. So again, that's not a daily drinker for everybody, but white2tea productions tend to be a bit more expensive. I pour here so I can get started drinking early. Jeez. Pretty lightly tinted soup color liqueur to start. Let me get back in here. Cinnamon, plum. Definitely a medicinal smell, but not super camphor necessarily. Yeah, it's got like a very sweet, earthy flavor on the nose, but not in kind of a composty way. Kind of more woody maybe, but not quite like ripe. I don't know. It truly is its own thing. These food bricks are produced in Hunan and processed fairly uniquely, thus the golden flowers. Cheers. clean, quite light to start. I might honestly toss this. Definitely some minerals in there. Go ahead and toss that to start. I'm trying to get into it. And to do so, I'm going to actually just get in here and physically manipulate some of these larger pieces and open them up. I'll see some of that. Those little dots there. Now these fungi are going to be unique to Fuzhuan. Or sorry, Hunan, excuse me. Should be good. Quite a bit more of the guy one now filled up. And I don't know how to pronounce the region exactly, but the Anhua, region, where these are produced in Hunan. Much darker soup color already. Cheers. You can see the leaves actually fairly green, frankly. A little hard to see in here, but quite a pale green. Really does remind one of where, you know. Much nicer. What an herbaceous thing happening in this. A bit more on the hay, on the kind of grassy spectrum. Yerba mate hay flavor, very dusty, earthy desert hay. That's kind of what I think of when I think of yerba mate. Not particularly fruity on the cup. Nice little bit of sweetness at the end, but not particularly sweet forward. Actually, quite a bit of sweetness on the Huigan. Nice. Not getting a lot of the smoke necessarily. Kind of a bit more of an earthy complexion for me. I'm gonna sit here and drink, if you will. The smoke is much more prevalent on the Huigan in the mouth afterwards. Warming tea for me. Some of the stems are quite purple, but overall material is pretty dark green. Not in a, there's kind of that like dull aged light green shang puer thing, and on this it's a bit more of a darker dull pale. It's almost like the leaves looked very dark to start potentially, and then have kind of the saturation of that green flavor color rather has kind of died off a little bit. Got more dull in here. Yeah, cinnamon, tobacco. Kind of that like leather couch, tobacco, desert, earth flavored complex. If you're into that. Strange to say those are all kind of related, but there you go. Nice little bit of that plummy sweetness now I'm tasting, just sitting here enjoying. Really not really astringent at all. A little bit of a mouth pucker, not particularly bitter. I think this profile is not my absolute favorite by any stretch, but I want to keep enjoying and experimenting with HI in general, especially some of these fermented teas that I have had a lot less of. Obviously, I've had a ton of puer on the channel, and that's kind of, you know, frankly, coming into rotation every day for show, and then certainly I do enjoy ripe every other day, I'd say. I'm sorry, raw. Excuse me, Shane. Cheers. Much darker, but yeah, a bit of a menthol thing. Body warming, slight mouth cooling. Tastes fermented, certainly. Couldn't tell you the age on this necessarily. Much sweeter. Ooh, nice. This is my favorite steeping so far. I think this is the third one with 2 rinses. So we're pretty far into this tea at this point. Again, for the price point, you can get a kilogram of this tea for $98, which is, pretty reasonable for something kind of unique like this. And certainly that is a lot of tea. So that's going to last you, one would think, quite a bit of time. Nice. Put the viscosity kind of like a 4 of 10. Maybe a 5. I like the balance on this. Again, I wouldn't say that I would go seek out this tea necessarily beyond just being interested in tea in general. So the profile for me is not my favorite profile overall. It's not something I would go and reach to as a must buy for myself. That's just me though. And everyone is different, certainly. So if this kind of profile sounds interesting to you, this is, I think, a pretty good representation of a high quality food brick. The smoke itself is interesting. I really don't notice it too much. Like I say, this tea is smoked once using traditional, 7-star stove. And then smoked an additional time with pine. I can get a bit of the piney thing with that kind of menthol resinous kind of thing happening. I think it's a nice balance. Some of these can have almost slight hints of kind of roasted oolong flavors, but subtle. I'm almost enjoying the Huigan and the lasting flavor of this tea more than the first couple of sips. I think it's a flavor profile that builds in strength, especially in the mouth. And let me get in here a little bit more for everybody. Try to really understand that green complexion of this tea. Just because it's not my favorite profile doesn't mean I'm not enjoying this at all, frankly. I think I will drink through this sample. I've already had it 3 times. Again, this is an exploratory tea for me, so I'm not going to be able to represent how this compares to other food bricks very well. So don't come to, you're not expecting that here. A bit more stringency now in the mouth, not overwhelming by any stretch, maybe like a 2 instead of a 0 as it had been. Leaves have opened up a whole bunch now, and you can kind of see, get some of these out. The leaves themselves are quite large. The material itself, it seems slightly less well kept than some other material. See these really big leaves. Don't know the cultivar on this. All right, come on. So I don't think that these teas have yet to sort of reach that high level, super sought out character, at least outside of, at least in the West rather. And so you're not going to see as many really high quality, expensive pressings. That's pretty dang cool. Quite yet, but demand increases for these. I think one of the issues potentially is the way that these age out, but I don't have a lot of experience drinking 20-year-old foo. So I'd say that the liqueur saturation is consistent. I think this is the 5th, 4th steeping for me. Cheers. lighter in viscosity, earthier, more medicinal. High notes are dying out a little bit. The fruit's harder to notice. Turning towards a bit more bitter with that yerba mate complexion. So a bit more of that dusty, earthy hay. Not in a dark soil compost way, more of a dust in the air, sun dried hay. God, take it from me, hay drinker 420. You know, it's like, how do I even? Yeah, I'm even making these pronouncements, and yet some of you are just like, I also am a horse. I know what you're talking about. Cheers to you. We're both extremely weird. Bit of astringency at the end of this one, which kind of plays at juiciness in some sense. This is nice, you know. Again, I think I'm going to drink through this. So I got a 25-gram sample. Shout out to white2tea for, you know, constantly sending over interesting stuff for us to try. Yeah, Fuzhuan, you know, heck, I'm going for one more. I'm off the boil now and out of water. So I'll let that hang out for a little bit. We'll push it. See how that performs. Hope everyone's having some great sessions today. Started today with some fungi from Japan. Changing it up quite a bit here, very different profile. And yeah, you know, I don't think I'm necessarily as drawn to yerba mate as I once was. I remember when James and I first started our first business together, which is at this point, oh my God, like 16 something years ago. I would just smash in yerba mate like it was nothing, and good Lord. I was drinking it kind of like chilled, iced. So not the like classic style with the super packed boiling water with your bombilla. Instead, a bit more of a iced tea almost, but nevertheless, my goodness, it's got some chutzpah in that one. So if you're a yerba mate fan, this is a tea for you, in my opinion. I really like the pine smoke at the end, actually. I think that's nice. It's very light. I've had plenty of other teas that are much stronger in their smokiness, especially from white2tea. If you're interested in some smoky white2tea, you can check out Campfire. Cheers. Nice. Bringing out more of that sweetness and those high plummy notes. I think maybe off of the boil might be good to finish out this tea, and then eventually, you know, press it as hard as you can at the very end if you really want to maximize the brew on this one. You don't necessarily have to, though. I think that at this price point, you can be drinking this for 50 cents a day, probably about as much as your coffee at home, something like that. Yeah, nice sweetness. Again, I can really taste the fermentation on this, but I couldn't tell you how fermented it is in terms of age. So 2 years, sure, great. Don't have any idea how it's going to change over time. Certainly there's stuff growing in it, so I would expect things to change. And yeah, I mean, this might pass the health benefits filter. Definitely a longer one for me today, but hey, I'm enjoying it. And again, I just want to emphasize that it doesn't have to be the tea that you want to drink every day for it to be an interesting tea for you today. Cheers to that. Yeah, nice. Gonna call it here. Subscribe, do all that stuff. Created an Instagram, looking to connect with tea freaks like myself. Really want to do that so that I can meet people specifically in Asia. So if you are based in Asia, you're in Taiwan, you're in China, you are in Japan, I would love to connect. I'd love to meet potentially and share a meal and wander aimlessly, as is life, as is the things we do. So you can subscribe, follow me. I don't know. I don't do social media really. The handle is Denny_TDB. Just look up Denny TDB. Probably going to find it there. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you like your foo bricks, hey, we have a couple episodes on them for sure. Love you. Been thinking about you day in, day out. Bye-bye.